Okay, so this one, exercise 10, it's a smaller one, so why don't we make it a little bigger just so that we can see it more clearly. So we're going to go to View and Fit on Screen, or Command 0, which will display it larger. And looking at the layers on this one, there's 3 layers. There's the top layer, layer 2, which is the house. And then under it we have a tree, or a partial tree. And then under that we have some sky. And what we're going to do basically is morph the house so that it looks like it's kind of growing out of the tree. And that's kind of a nice one because we're going to use 2 kinds of masking. We're going to use the gradient mask style of masking, and then we're also going to use painting masking. First though, we're just going to simply get rid of the whitish background around this house. So try to move your house over a little so that none of the background is off the edge. That way you won't have to erase it later. And then an easy way to cut out the background, I think, is just to quick select it. So we'll use quick selection tool, and we're just going to paint to grab the background. So grab a piece of it, you can hit delete, deselect, Command D, or select, deselect, and then go grab another piece of it and hit delete again. And there might be, in some cases, there's little lines of pixels. We'll erase those. And then now I'm going to take the eraser and I'm just going to get rid of that area I missed grabbing. And I'm noticing right near this chimney, let me zoom in on it, you guys might have the same situation. I have a little bit of white left here, so once again I'll quick select it. I'll have to make the brush really little. And just grab that white and then delete that. And you know, if it's still not great, I could always use a lasso too. So I can just grab it with my lasso tool to cut it out. And then the next part of it, actually, let's switch to the lasso tools, and we want to get rid of all of this background up to the very edge of the house. So since it's a house, it has straight lines. Let's go ahead and use polygonal, and we're just going to go and grab, we're trying to get rid of that, all this excess piece we don't want. So just draw around it, hit delete, deselect, and then draw around it again, and hit delete and deselect. And I'll pause this recording so then make sure we all are caught up to this part before we move on. Once your house, you know, that background part is removed, then the next thing we're going to do is warp the house to get it to look like it's growing out of the tree. So we want the house width to be the same width as the tree trunk. And you have to overlap some of the trunk with the house because you need an area to blend them together. So don't have your house up too high. Have it, you know, about maybe down like this at least. And then we're going to use the warp command. And to do that, go to Edit, Transform, and Warp. And, you know, when you guys make your mythological creatures, you also probably might have to warp things. You might have, if you're trying to put an elephant's head on, you know, say a wolf body, you might need to make the neck thinner or thicker, you know, depending on what you're trying to do. So we're going to click in the corner, and we're going to pull over a bit, and then we're going to do the same thing in the other corner. And if you can't get to the edge, you can zoom out a little and just drag the image out like that, and then you can get to it. Yeah, Command plus and minus, or use the navigator, or use the But I'm just going to drag this over. And now I'm going to go, and I'm going to make it big again so I can see it. But I'm going to pull these little, see these little handlebars that are kind of sticking out with the circle on them? You can pull those and you can kind of move it, and this is kind of warping it so that it pulls in. And with the way the warp tool works, anywhere that has an intersection you can grab and you can move. So you can really adjust the house. I can also make it wider if I wanted to. If I wanted the top to kind of splay out and get wide, I could do that. Just kind of play with it, see what you can do. Now, one thing to know, the more you warp, you are going to end up kind of reducing the clarity of the image. So if you warp a whole bunch, it might be kind of fuzzed out, blurry. And then, you can click OK and get out of that and kind of check it out, or you pretty right on there with how you warped it. You can always go back, even after you put a mask on the layer. If you need to go back, you can. You can mess with it more. So the next step, we're going to go to our layer panel, and we're going to put a mask on that top layer, the house layer. And this time we're going to do the same thing we did with the surfer. We're going to use a gradient, black and white gradient, and we're going to go to linear, and we want to throw down black to white, and I'm going to click kind of below the picture of where the house is, and I'm going to pull up a little bit, and actually that's backwards. Let me flip these. So I'm going to do it again. I flipped it so that my black was on top. But notice how as I go across here, that house is kind of blending out. And I guess the goal is to try to do it so you're not leaving the fence, but you're also not going too far up that you see the edge of where the tree ends. Kind of like that. And then I'm actually going to need to warp my house a little more, because my house was a little too thick right here. So I'll go back to the house picture. I'm going to click out of the mask, and then I'll warp it just a little more. Just be aware, you need to either be on the mask when you're masking or on the photo if you're doing anything else. Okay, so the next step, we're going to actually just do a simple mask on the tree layer. And we really just want to cut this piece off and this piece, since the photo ends and it doesn't look very good. So go to the tree layer, put a mask, and now you can just use black paint. And I'd maybe make your opacity high again, 100, so that you can erase it easily. Don't make your brush too fuzzed out. Make it a little bit harder so that you don't blur out the tree. And then you can just go and erase. So, using a mask. You could use an eraser, you could select and delete. I mean, there's more than one way to do this, but since we're masking, you might as well stick to masking. So this is just like when we painted out the white background on the baby. We're doing the same, except we are having to control the edge a little bit as you hit the tree.
What's the color?
It's the regular brush. Okay, don't use color replacement when you paint. For masking, it's always just going to be the regular brush. Now you could go in and you could add color to this tree. And if you take off too much house, remember, just flip to white, and then you can put back. You could also lower the opacity, and if there's a part of this where it's blending that you don't like, you could fix that. Oops. So it's, you know, it's the same thing. We happen to be using two. We're using one with a gradient, and then the next one is just painting. And the background can just stay the way it is. You could play around with the color of all of these items if you wanted to. You know, you could go in and you could paint with color replacement, or you could maybe, if I wanted the house to be black and white, I could remove some of the color by going to image, adjustment, and let me make sure I'm in the right spot though. I need to be in the house. So I could go to image, adjustment, and then I could go to hue saturation, and I could drop some of that brown out of it by moving it. So you can do quite a lot that way. But now just keep in mind that when you adjust color, you always want to be on the photo, not on the mask. If you try it with the mask, it's going to be grayed out. So you'll see it, it'll be all gray. That's all you need to do with this. Save it, name it exercise 10. So last name, first name, EX10, and then you're done.